Alien Earth came out, and this show manages to be both incredibly boring and terrible. All of the surface level stuff, from Timothy Oliphant's performance to the visuals, the set designs, pretty cool. But everything beyond that is just amateur hour at best and straight up dumb at worst. All of the ideas and concepts that seem like they could be interesting happen off screen, as is typical for many modern shows. Characters contradict themselves and do completely nonsensical things over and over. The plot armor is so thick that the xenomorph might as well pull out a script on screen and just show it to the other character before he runs away. I will say I respect that the writers had enough self-awareness to realize how stupid they are, so they focused the show around children in adults' bodies. That way, when everything happens that's retarded because they didn't think about it, they can say, oh, well, they're kids. They're supposed to be retarded. So props to them for building that crutch into their story, I guess. None of the characters are even worth remembering. They don't really have personalities. They kill off an entire crew, introduce another crew, and then kill them off too. All of the things that could be interesting are just completely glossed over. And they don't even try to ask basic questions that would be of interest to the audience. And I suspect that this show is going to go down the rabbit hole of humans were the bad guy all along, actually. Based on how heavy-handed they are of this world building where there's 5 corporations vying for power and no governments in sight. Let's just get into it. The first opening message explains that there's cyborgs, which are enhanced humans, synthetics, as we already know, and then hybrids, which are human brains in synthetic bodies. I guess the hybrids and cyborgs will have to be killed off by the end of the season if they care about lore, which they might not. So that whole crew is on their way back to Earth. The xenomorph gets loose, kills the whole crew, and that ship is going to crash onto Earth later. They did specify that the Asian was driving, and that ends up leading to a collision and crash on Earth. Not sure what the show is trying to say by that. The other subplot is essentially the alien equivalent of Mark Zuckerberg is creating these human synthetic hybrids. He's the youngest trillionaire ever. He kind of looks like if Frodo fucked Timothy Chalamet, but they were both related. And he wants to put human brains in synthetic bodies, but adult brains won't take. So a bunch of terminally ill children are used instead because young minds have more plasticity. All the meanwhile, the show beats you in the face with a Peter Pan parallel. He's literally reading the book. They call him the Lost Boys. Wonderful. So this ship crashes into Earth near alien Mark Zuckerberg's area. So he wants to claim the resources from it. I guess we should all ignore the fact that this should essentially just be like a nuke going off in the city. And then on top of that, it ends up partway through a skyscraper that doesn't just collapse. And that's where the whole first couple episodes take place. So right away, you know you're off to a banger start. Well, I say that actually takes 40 minutes, even though nothing interesting happens. This also ignores the fact that they have no space defenses. They're not aware of this crashing ship until it lands, which is insane for an intergalactic species. Everything about the children getting turned into hybrids should have taken like a few episodes to get to know the kids, the logistics, possibilities. This is where you want to have your conversations about souls and humanity and what all that stuff actually means. But this show just says fuck it. And the cute brown-haired chick that you've seen in the trailers changes her name from Marcy to Wendy as she transforms. So I guess the whole thing might be some kind of trans allegory too. I don't fucking know. And her and her brother both like Ice Age, and she wants to be reunited with him, so she watches him on webcams and shit. Timothy Oliphant is just a regular synthetic, and he's kind of in charge of these hybrids as the show goes on. Obviously, the ship that crashed had xenomorphs on it and other weird space things. So Mark Zuckerberg says, I guess it belongs to us now because it's on his property. And very conveniently, Wendy's brother, Joe, is a medic who gets sent to this incident so they can be reunited. And we see the black cyborg dude, Morrow, escape the ship. He survived the crash. And his mission is to recapture all the specimens for Weyland-Yutani, because obviously they got out as the ship was destroyed, even though he survived. We get some really stupid attempts at humor along the way, where Wendy talks about how weird it is to have boobs. She asks this guy about his shitty sperm for no real reason. The actress is obviously attractive, but it is weird to have a line where she's talking about having boobs when she's pretty petite. Anyway, we also see her jump like 200 feet off a cliff. She just lands on top of the sand. She's super fast. Alien Mark Zuckerberg wants to go recover this shit, so he wants to send Timothy Oliphant to go get it. And Wendy says, why can't we go do search and rescue? My brother will be there. His assistant's like, hey, we spent a shitload of money on them. We can't lose one. And his response is just, okay, then don't lose one. Smartest guy in the universe, company named Prodigy. He is a prodigy, full retard. And all of this just seems asinine to me because there's kind of the implication that their brains are going to develop in this synthetic body. But at the same time, her brother's only a couple years older than her, and he's clearly an adult now, but she acts like she's still 10 when she got transferred over to the synthetic body. So there's no real reason to think that her brain would develop as the story goes on or as time goes on at this point. Not to mention the fact that you're sending a bunch of children into a search and rescue mission where there's presumably going to be dead bodies and who knows what else. And this is the plan of the smartest man in the universe. How fucking dangerous would it be to have a 10-year-old's mind with a superhuman body? That's just insanity on its own. And the fact that they're allowed to wander free and everything is absurd. So the entire plan is just farcical, but that's what the show does and tries to justify it with really compelling arguments like, oh, just don't fuck it up. Morrow catches a couple of the investigators at gunpoint, ties them up, and we get to watch them get blood drained by a weird alien thing. The first 2 episodes of the show are kind of like a bad slasher movie, honestly. They don't really seem to understand the suspense aspect of Alien or the fact that part of what makes it scary is that it wants to use humans to reproduce, not just murder them. There's a conversation that in a vacuum I like where Timothy Oliphant tells Wendy that humans used to be food and essentially now they pretend not to be. And he talks about how they developed their technology and blah, blah, blah. And his performance is good and the conversation is interesting, but it just kind of comes out of fucking nowhere. But he's the ringleader for what amounts to a bunch of retards with superpowers because that's the genius plan of Alien Zuckerberg. I mean, this is a show where it's hard to even know anybody's names outside of Wendy, and that's because hers is said directly. So the whole first episode is kind of a setup that establishes nothing. The second episode is just plot armor galore. Like we see the alien lurking in the background quite a bit for Joe, but for everyone else, as soon as it encounters them, they're just fucking dead off screen. And a lot of this is kind of wandering around, super unclear the logistics of this building. We find out Zuckerberg's motivation is kind of immortality, but kind of just because he wants other smart people to talk to. Fucking cringe. And the reason the logistics are hard to follow is because the editing is piss poor, but then they say shit like there's 100 floors, 20 below the surface and 80 above, but then Joe ends up on floor 60 for no real reason. Like he has to take the elevator to escape the xenomorph, but then he just goes to 60, I guess. So we got our first instance of plot armor here where the alien is above Joe, but doesn't just fucking kill him like it does everyone else. I mean, maybe Joe's a fucking superhuman too, I don't know. He falls like 20 feet onto his back, gets up and runs before the xenomorph lands on him, and then he's the beneficiary of the fastest closing elevator doors ever in any universe. Her ability to just hack technology everywhere is kind of world-breaking and insane. Again, whatever at this fucking point. They could have made this interesting in so many other ways. One of them being to not show the kids being transformed into adults. Just let the audience think, oh, they're fucking weird synthetics or whatever, and then reveal the backstory. Or we could have actually spent the appropriate amount of time getting to know these people so the transformation's a big fucking deal instead of just slapping a brain in a robot and calling it good. We see a little conversation where Weyland-Yutani talks to Prodigy, and Zuckerberg just says, get fucked. Let the lawyers hash it out. Not that alien species would have no value, obviously, but it is kind of weird that it's such a big deal in this universe where presumably you're finding new planets and species all the time. Kirsch and his team are kind of search and rescue, looking for whatever they were in deep space for. Morrow's looking for the specimens. Wendy's looking for her brother. We get this weird alien plant thing that they're all very comfortable being very close to, and they just kind of vaguely keep an eye on it. And we get the poorly acting adults trying to act like scared 10-year-olds. They find the weird eyeball thing we saw and trap it under a bin after we see this gross cat that it killed / took over. The decision to make your main characters all annoying 10-year-olds in adult bodies is certainly a bold one. And here's where the plot armor goes haywire. Up on floor 60, the xenomorph's already there, but luckily he's very theatrical. So we see some dumbass aristocrat party that didn't get interrupted by the spaceship clashing into the fucking building. And when we cut, the xenomorph was nice enough to blend into the statue instead of just killing Joe and this guy in like 2 seconds. So literally in the time that it takes Joe to get this dead body off of him because the alien busted them through the door, the entire party is dead. I just want to put that in perspective for how much time he's been around Joe and not killed him, that an entire party of people was dead in the time that it took him to stand up and walk into the next room. The alien is very theatrical again. If you can see the screen here, he's just lurking in the background and then misses. Cyborg Moro comes in, electrocutes Joe and the alien, and then just does this boom gun thing to him that seems like magic. And now he can just lug the alien around like a suitcase. Pretty fucking convenient weapon he has. They don't really seem to understand the fundamental horror of Alien. It's always just kind of lurking. It's intelligent. It's got its acid. It's not just a knife-wielding monster going on murderous rampages like this show would have you believe. Cyborg gets the most plot armor again. He's held up by the Weyland-Yutani guys. They try to arrest him. The alien conveniently busts out at this time. The alien kills all of them instantly and then just kind of yawns in his face until it gets distracted. The dude watching the Thorian is very okay with this penis insertion thing just hanging out in front of his face, but luckily nothing happens. Timothy Oliphant sees the xenomorph eggs and is like, hey, we're going to secure those, you guys go get them. We get a bunch of flashbacks of Joe watching 1977 baseball highlights with his dad. No clue why they'd be watching 1970s highlights in this time. I doubt people today even give a shit about 1970s baseball highlights. Wendy finds him and doesn't reveal herself right away. Luckily, the Indian boy, whose name I don't even know, reveals to Joe that Wendy is his sister. Joe asks her some pretty specific things, if she remembers them, and she does. Everyone in the show is working their way toward the eggs. Wendy asks Joe to come with her. He says no, and then she says we have the same boss, so he changes to no but really yes very quickly. And again, in a wildly stupid scene, the xenomorph tackles Joe outside of a hole down who knows how far, the only person whose throat he didn't just cut. And we literally see Wendy tell Indian boy guard the eggs, and instead of jumping down like we've already seen her do, she goes to take the stairs. And then we get some Tool music, and that's the first 2 episodes. This show is just wildly stupid. There are no characters to have an interest in. At best, it's a half-assed attempt at emotional manipulation because you know they were terminally ill children, now with adult bodies. We get a lot of people just doing mundane things and not having interesting conversations that should be had. And I highly suspect that this is yet another entry in the Alien franchise that people will say they love. A month from the ending, no one will talk about it. No one will remember it. If you ask people who their favorite character is, they couldn't even fucking name one. And when Alien Remus comes out or whatever the fuck, this will just be fallen by the wayside. No one will care. And we'll all pretend like that movie is good for a bit too, because it's willing to fucking butcher the lore even further and make some references. I'm gonna leave it here for this one. I guess I'll be back next week after episode 3 to see if this shit gets worse or better or stays the same. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. Try responding to the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.